Welcome to Brightly, You Radiant Being, the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. Each episode, we use our good and bad experiences, friendship, and passions to inspire thought provoking conversation and soul driven advice to better help you create a life worth living and step more brightly into yourself, inch by inch.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Tracy. So I realized that we talked about this in our last episode, but because I am a person who absolutely loves birthdays,
And we record two episodes in a day, so minutes have passed. Minutes.
Feels like seconds. Anyways. So I did just have a big birthday, like we said. And I've been thinking a lot about something that my mom said when she was in hospice. And it was so ridiculous to us at the time, but it was very important to her. She was like, this is what she said, I'm not leaving you a legacy. I know.
What does that mean?
Right? And I think in her brain, she was thinking monetary. But for us, we were like, what are you kidding? Like your whole life has been a legacy. You know, she was an author, she was a speaker, but more importantly than that, she would she literally baked a cake once for me to have for my little tea party with my dolls. And she would take me outside to look for fairies. And she would have lunch with me. And we would talk about things that I wanted to accomplish. And so for us, for me, her whole life was the legacy, right? And so, but naturally, then I start thinking, all right, what kind of a legacy am I leaving? Not monetarily, but what kind of a legacy am I leaving? And when I'm thinking about a legacy, then what naturally happens is that you look at how you're living your life, right? And we're coming to the end of 2023. And so it's a wonderful time, especially we just talked about values literally minutes ago. We just had a show on values. And we felt like it would tie in wonderfully with saying goodbye to this year, but not just saying goodbye, having more of like, what are the lessons learned from this last year? What are maybe some of the legacies of this last year that will bring into the next year? What do we want to say goodbye to? What do we want to welcome in? And so we're just going to have a conversation around 2023 and just kind of the different things that happened to us, how we felt about it. Yeah, so let's dig in.
I love that. Thank you for the introduction and the framework. I want to take a step back though and just reflect on your mom for a second.
Yeah.
That a woman, as much of a go-getter as she was to steal from my old neighbor Joan, your mom was a go-getter in every sense of the word. And she seemed to be a goal setter and achiever and really value productivity and contribution and participating in your own life, right? In addition to her overarching goal of impacting women and making other women's lives better and empowering them. And that even someone like that, who even I, never having met her, could list her accomplishments and a legacy that she left.
Yeah.
That even her reflecting on her life could think that she didn't do enough or that she didn't set a legacy. It both confounds and frustrates me. And then also makes so much sense as to what probably was driving her, was that it was never enough, right? She still always had more she wanted to do, or it wasn't big enough.
I think you hit on it there. It was never enough. And I think that that speaks to a deeper issue that I feel like people who grew up during the Depression
Yeah.
probably not only literally was there never enough, but then um, it just spilled over into life as there never being enough, right? Yeah.
So that's why I think it's so important to not only like give yourself the benefit of an actual audit of some point at different stages in your life, whether it's yearly, monthly, quarterly, every 5 years or whatever, at the end of major milestones or before a milestone. Because lessons learned, as you so aptly called it, it's not just what you didn't do or what went wrong. Lessons learned is always also meant to capture what went well so you can do it again and carry those successes forward.
Absolutely. So you can do it again. And I think also the thing to remember with lessons learned is that even with the things that didn't go well, it's how might they have gone better? What could we do differently next year? Not you're an idiot and you did that wrong. And,
Or,
you know,
as we used to say all the time, bury the body. What do you need to stick a pin in? What is done? What is not actually a goal, but something you keep dragging with you year after year after year that you don't really want to do? Because if you did, it'd be done, right? Like, and it doesn't mean
yes,
you can always dig the body back up if it becomes a goal again. But
I love
like
the whole
it's
analogy of the dead body.
I like taking something and like so my journal entry that I just in between episodes here I had a journal entry on the 30th, which is uh just yesterday from when we're recording this.
Yeah.
And it started out just with like the Wednesday optimism still in me because I journal first thing in the morning. And
Mhm.
so it was still very much like, ooh, as of tomorrow, we'll have 31 days left in the year. We have a whole month. What do we want to do? And by the end of this 5x7 journal, it was like, I'm a failure. And I actually listed like three really big successes this year, and it was still like, but it's not enough. And then I looked at it, and like today's journal entry was all about like, you have some concrete examples here of why this year was actually a success, why you were a success, why it was a win. And like my birthday this past summer, um, was when during my, I tend to do some of these audits or kick them off around my birthday. And I was like, yeah, this year didn't go how, January, December, you wanted it to, but, you've had over 100 doctor's appointments. That is by the end of this year, it will have been a third of your year will have been appointments and doctors, and not even including the rest and recovery and healing. Like maybe it's okay you didn't run a marathon. Maybe it's okay you didn't write a book, right? Like maybe it's okay.
And think of the outcome because of all those hundreds of doctors. Now,
Yes.
granted, they weren't all related to the exact
Yes.
same thing, but because of those, the success of the latest of your latest surgery, like I would close this year out for you as a
Huge win.
huge,
Huge win. But
huge.
it took me crunching the numbers. It took me actually writing down and reflecting, and instead of looking at what I didn't do
Yeah.
and calling myself lazy and a failure and it wasn't enough, I looked at what I did do. Right. And then it's kind of like the end of the year balancing of the books. That's why we're calling it an audit, right? We're looking at what we actually did, and making sure we're getting credit for that.
Okay, and I love that to use the term balancing the books because I also love it that you said it took me crunching the numbers because I think this is another case where we have a tendency to be like, I think this year was this, or I didn't do anything I want. The episode of my October episode where I was like, I have failed everything, right? But yet, when you actually take the time to either go through your planner or think about your year, think about all the things that you did do, or the times you had so much fun with friends or family, or or any number of things. It is another thing where you literally do have to crunch the numbers to get the real perspective on what actually happened, because otherwise we're just making assumptions about our own life that we lived, right?
Well,
Because we're humans.
and it's nobody knows us like we know ourselves, and also we're sometimes the last person to learn things about ourselves, right?
Yes.
Because I think in addition to maybe overinflating some things, we can also I guess that could go positive or negative, right? We can the challenge I had in August was I was like, God, you've been so lazy this year. Like, even, like you're in pain and you had back surgery and all this other stuff is going on. You could have been in active rest. You could have read books. You could have XYZ'd. And so that's what I meant by like crunching the numbers is I had been keeping a daily journal of like what I do in a day, kind of like Andy Warhol style. Here's where I went, who I saw, what I ate, right? Like just like went for a walk, like went to work, this and that. And so that's how I was able to actually crunch the numbers and look at, were you lazy or were you not home? Right? Like, were you were you lazy and not reading books, or did you have to make up work because your time was otherwise spent, right? And so like I just started and I was like, okay, you didn't read books. You read a lot of medical journals and articles. And you researched a lot of physicians, and like you were reading, your to be read pile didn't go down, right? And so it gave me a chance to give myself grace. As we saw, that didn't last because here I was looking at all the things. I was like, God, I looked at my list from at the end of last year and was like, could I do any of this in 31 days? Could I crunch a whole year into a month with 12 hours notice? Can I make that plan? And I was like,
So
no.
tell me what you mean by the list at the end of last year. Did you have a list of the things that you were hoping to accomplish in 2023?
Yeah, my goals, my level 10 life areas.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly what I kind of was looking at was I did that, oh, I forget the German name for it, but those 13 wishes, where you write
Yeah.
down 13 things on 13 different scraps of paper. And then one a year or one a day leading up to either Yule or the new year, you burn it without knowing what it is. And then the 13th day, the 13th wish you take out and you open it. So you didn't know what any of them were while you're doing that. And that 13th one is your responsibility for the year. And the other
Mm-hmm.
12 are things the universe is going to bring up, right? And so I think why I've been so hard on myself this year is because every time I look at this little postcard I wrote him on, the thing I owned was growth. And I was like, oh, we have not been intentionally doing that this year. We didn't even define what growth would look like to be able to measure it. Um,
Well, that's part of it. You didn't define it in order
exactly.
to measure it. But I would say there was been a lot
I
of
think
growth.
I think so too. But
Yeah.
what made me look at this again was a healthy or a pain-free body was one of the things the universe has given. And I got a pretty big win this year.
Yeah.
And so that's what inspired me yesterday when I was going back and forth and the wishy-washiness of how successful this year was and whether I was passively or actively involved in those successes. That's what made me look at this and be like, is the universe going to give me these other 11 things it was responsible for in December? And
Well,
how can I help in the way that I helped with the health and the pain-free stuff?
yeah. Yeah.
And it
Because
just,
my 13th one, the one that I was responsible for, I stopped, started. It was like a healthy, like vibrant body. And I'm like, yeah, you did nothing for that. You big deal. You go on a walk every once in a while. Anyways,
well,
yeah.
so what I kind of landed on after journaling and then also reflecting on this list is if the universe were to give me these other 11 things in the next 31 days, I would need all of 2024 to rest and recuperate because that would be one hell of a month. And so I landed on I'm really grateful for what I got and for how I contributed to that, and that even if some of what I did felt passive, right? Like I didn't go to medical school. I didn't operate on my own liver, right? Like I didn't. I got really blessed
You're
and lucky other
hilarious.
people did things in life to get me to where I am today. But I did make sure I advocated. I mean, I have a whole podcast episode on all
Hmm.
that I did this year to get,
Yes.
and for 15 years to get to this point. And so again, it took me like sitting down and auditing, like it didn't look like how you thought it would look, but you're also being really hard on yourself about how much you could have even objectively achieved this year.
How many times do you suppose you're going to be hard on yourself
Every
next year?
Thursday. Yes, the 30th was a Thursday, folks. You don't need a calendar when Tracy starts talking like this. Oh my God, it's Thursday. What is she doing with her life? Existential crises. That's what I'm doing. Not being kind to myself. That's what I'm doing. Fridays, I get it all out on air.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There you go. I still think, the yearly compass
I
that
love
you
that.
have shared with me, and I would say anyone just, even if you only did a few of the exercises, it's so worthwhile. I don't want to, I didn't want to use the questions that they use because they put a lot of effort into this, but I definitely, and I think you shared with me, I mean, it's free, right?
Yeah, so I was just looking it up. So the yearly compass is just a handful of people. They're from somewhere in Europe, I think, but they put this together. It's just called yearcompass.com. And the very first thing is download the booklet. It's free. And it's a little pamphlet.
Mhm.
They give you a couple different PDF options. You can either fill it in and do it on your computer, or you can print it multiple sizes as a packet, as a book. But they have you reflect on the past year and then plan for the next year, all in this like
Mhm.
little 10-page book. Um it's a really nice curated way to get started, and like you called what we're doing a lessons learned, right? It's kind of, I feel like it's become a little too simple for me, right? Like sometimes it's kind of a nice thing to reflect on, some journal questions now, but I want an audit. I want what we're doing.
Oh, I think that's funny because I would have thought that that was more intense and more of a deep dive than this. Because although this, one would hope that we're going to go offline and actually really reflect deeper on it and think about it. One thing I want to think more about is, and it just came out while we were talking, I hadn't planned on this at all. Because when I talked about the legacy, then I actually said the words, what's the legacy of last year? And so I think and that could be, you could use any term for that, like what was the theme of last year? We've done that before, like what would the word have been for
Yeah, you could.
last year? But what's the legacy? So what are the things that I want to bring forward that maybe I learned or changed or how I grew. And now I want to maybe pay that forward somehow into the next year. I'm not even sure what I'm talking about right now, everyone. So this is like a baby idea, and I'm just like vomiting it out of my
So
mouth.
I love I love and hate the word legacy. And here's
Oh,
why.
tell me. Yeah.
So I a huge part of my career, I have done what my specialty is. I've done my job, but I've also been the executive assistant for the CEO, president, owner at the same time, right? They usually kind of
Hmm.
have kind of a chief of staff kind of person, right?
Hmm.
And so I used to kind of love asking when I start a new company or we get a new director or new something, I'd ask them, do you have a legacy you are hoping to leave, right? Like, do you approach your work with an end in mind of, I'm going to leave a legacy for this company or this organization? If so, what is it? And some of them really love that question and they've thought about it and they're in their 10-year journey and their plan and they're working the steps and they're exactly what we talk about on this show. The most recent person I asked it of interrupted me mid question. Is like, I hate this question. This question gives me so much anxiety. I the organization has a mission and a vision and values, and I'm just trying to uphold that, right? Like her goal was to uphold that and to support the people around her. And I'm
Hmm.
like, that's a legacy though, right? Like it doesn't have to be I changed the future of libraries, right? Like it can just be like I did my job well. right? Like I did my job with integrity. And so when I think of like the legacy in my life, so many of us think about like what's my obituary gonna say? Like that's a really common thing I see on social media now is living for your
Right.
obituary, not your resume or something like that. And I'm like,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
yeah. And I'm like,
Yeah.
my obituary is gonna be boring because I'm in it for I'm not in it for this big grand story that other people would be impressed by, right? Like I'm in it for the little moments. Like my obituary would be really expensive if I were to write the legacy as I'm living it.
I think you're wrong. I feel like I feel like your obituary, while you say I'm none of these grand things, but it's those little things that actually equal grand things
Mm.
because no one is kinder and more generous and goes out of their way. Like you understand people. I'm hoping to get this right.
You're gonna draft my obituary for me, right? And make sure my family has this.
Yeah, yeah. You understand people at such a like a cellular level that it's like you get them right away and and so then your ability to choose gifts or lunches or outings or something like that is it's unheard of,
Well, thank
right?
you.
Well, and but it goes so much deeper than that because that means that you live your life with this, I think, with this empathy mindset and kindness. And yeah, so I
But
don't
that's what
see
I
that.
mean in like the little moments where you did a great job of summarizing that just in a succinct, broad way about me, just describing me. But where I'm saying like my obituary will be really expensive is like there'd be 3 paragraphs about my impact on Amy. There'd be 3 paragraphs about my impact
Exactly.
on my each of my sisters, right? Like it would be because
Yeah.
I'm living for these individual in the moment things where there are some people who are living for the grand legacy of like
Yeah.
changing technology, right? Of like changing the world of like
Right.
and I've
It's
never been a
yeah.
big picture person. I've always been a day-to-day person.
I'm sorry. I was lost in thought because all of a sudden I went, am I a big picture person or a day-to-day person? And I think I'm a big picture person.
I think that's how we balance each other out really well. And you know, a lot of times when um you talk about me in terms of like how we balance each other out on the show, it's like you like to organize, you get a structure, you do this, and I think that's why we work well is because you also help me see the end or the bigger goal or the bigger picture or the why so that I don't get stuck in the minutia and in the like
Yeah.
production of it. um
So I think that when we're thinking about our this year, 2023, how to not get stuck in like, oh, and then this happened at work, and then that happened, those types of things. Or is that part of the lessons learned? Is if you are stuck in the minutia of certain day-to-day things, is that maybe your lesson learned to
I
maybe
think
you
it
need a
goes,
change?
how does it make you feel and do you want to feel differently, right? Like
Yeah,
if there are some people who are perfectly happy living in that state and not because they're lazy, not because they're not self-aware, but they like the busyness of it, they like the being reactive, and that's where maybe their strengths are just what helps them get through. I don't like that because I like to have a story at the end of the day.
you
um
do.
where when the stories I'm telling each day are about how frustrated I am or about how, oh, I knew this was going to happen, that's a sign to me when I go back for my yearly audit and lessons learned. I need a different job, I need to broaden my friendships, I need different hobbies, I'm not enjoying this anymore. So I think that again is where the audit comes in, and it's about how do you want to feel, and did these moments help you or hurt you from feeling that. again, crunching the numbers. How did it balance out if it was on a scale? I mean, because life's not, like you mentioned, joy in the last episode isn't on your values list because that to you is a default. It's expected that your life brings you joy. And so, if you are doing your yearly audit and you noticed joy with what it wasn't sinking down, right? That it was way up here and unhappiness was down below, I would like to think that you'd make some pretty big changes, right?
Right, right. That's interesting that you brought that up because at our work, there is this new little feature that every time I log in now, a little thing says, "How are you feeling?" And you have to choose an emoji with how you're feeling.
I don't have that. I work where you work.
It's in Teams. You don't get it in
Oh,
Teams?
wow. No,
Yeah.
it's not turned on for me.
Okay. Well, for whatever reason, it got turned on for me. And every day it's like, "How are you?" And lately I haven't been that great. And to actually choose the the face that is just like the flat line,
Meh.
I'm like, "Oh, what?" Like it makes you think. It
Well, and
makes you think.
I love that because in order to do an audit, you have to have metrics. And so maybe part of if you're not, so right now you might be doing a qualitative audit on your year and just kind of thinking of
Mhm.
major milestones, reflecting on goals that did or didn't get done. But one thing I've seen a lot of bullet journalers and other people do are those mood trackers, which I think is what
Yes.
Teams is doing for you.
It is doing that, but it makes me think, and this whole conversation has made me think, I need to start doing a mood tracker. And I never used to think, why do I used to always just be like, why do you need a mood tracker? You're always in a good mood. Well, I'm not always in a good mood. The expectation is that I'll be in a good mood. And frankly, I think it's a lot of other people's expectation of me that I'll be in a good mood. But I think I need to start tracking that. So I have those metrics.
And I think it's so huge to notice if because I don't that data isn't shared with anybody else, right? Is Teams and
Right.
Microsoft, it's just kind of for you.
Hmm.
So if you're not clicking how you actually feel because you feel ashamed that you're meh again, that is data, my friend. You don't need the mood tracker anymore. You are now feeling shame about something nobody else knows. If you are lying to your AI about how you feel because you're like, oh, I don't want to say I feel bad again, right? That's important to note for your audit, right? Like, so I have my journal that I have all my existential crises in every day or big grand dreams. It's whiplash. I'm not rereading this year because one day we'll be like, oh, I'm so glad I'm over this and like blah blah blah. And then 3 days later, I'm writing on the same topic as though that day never happened. But what I started doing this year was I have this weekly journal. I just got it at Target. It's by Ivory Paper Co. and I love it. If you're on YouTube, you can see it, but it's just like five
Oh,
lines per day. It's just a
yeah.
week per 2-page spread and I've been filling in, like I think I said in the last episode at the start of this one, just like the exact things that I've been doing. And then now, based on this, I might rate my overall satisfaction with the day, right? Whether a mood satisfaction, but like
Okay. I love the satisfaction survey of the day.
how and like am I satisfied with did I live in congruence with my values, right? Like you get to
Mhm.
pick the metric that you want to measure throughout the year or the week or
I
the month.
really love that, Tracy.
And then the important thing with an audit though, when you go back, is it hitting your thresholds? Is it hitting the appetite? Is it adding up, right? Like what are you going to do with your summary of the year? Are you gonna feel bad about it? Are you
Are
going
you
to
going to
make
make
changes?
changes?
Are you gonna
Yes.
celebrate it, right? Because my
Hmm.
post yesterday, my journal entry yesterday ran the gamut of blame, shame, good job, right? Like it was everything. And at the end of it, I realized like I need to celebrate my wins. Just because I only had 3 wins and not 10 this year does not mean we don't celebrate the 3.
Yeah. Really good point. I started this, well, we started this episode But the show notes, I had specific questions for this past year, but we didn't need them. And in fact, I'm glad that we didn't go through them because it was a much better conversation. But I think what I want to take away from this, and what I hope other people can take away from this, is that you get to be the creator of your audit, right? You get to create the metrics that you want to measure. You get to decide how you're going to measure it. You get to decide what you're going to do with the information. But what I would say, and it's for myself, is that it's one thing to view information and to think about the information, but then if you don't actually learn and react or respond to the information, then it was just an act in futility, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want that to be my legacy for this last. I don't want anything to be an act in futility.
So if you feel overwhelmed at the thought of what is my legacy, right? Or if you're more Debbie Downer like me, and in that moment that Amy started with, her mom was, if you tend to be hard on yourself, what don't you want your legacy to be? I think that's
Ooh.
where I was struggling with what did or didn't you accomplish this year, is it didn't match what I wanted to do. But by doing the audit after that journal entry and by really reflecting on the year and what I had accomplished and what it took to get there, I realized my expectations were too high of myself, per usual. It's not huge news, but it is going to influence the goals for 2024, right?
Honestly, that is one of the questions that I wrote down was how might you plan for the coming year so that you're not overwhelmed or disappointed? Because 100% same thing for me, Tracy. And I did not have all of the challenges that you had. And I was disappointed as well at first with all the things that I didn't accomplish, until I finally thought about it and thought about maybe a lot of things weren't accomplished, but the year was actually very good. I mean, Rick and I went to France. Like, that was a huge part
Amazing.
of our year. It was a huge part of like the planning and the process and all of that. So that it felt like that deserved more weight than other things in the year.
And do you do this where your successes feel further in the past than the things you didn't do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's human nature as well. Just like you can have somebody, you could have like 20 people tell you, oh, I just love the way you wrote this, and I love the way you presented that, and this seemed great, and that seemed great. And one person could say, you didn't even hit on this thing. I think you were really lacking in this. And that's all you're going to think about, because it's human nature, and we need to stop that. We need to absolutely stop that.
Okay, so with that, what were the best things that happened to you this year?
Well, obviously France.
Obviously.
so France was something that happened to me. And while it didn't happen to me, I was with my sister when she found out. She went for her, it was 5+ years, and she's cancer free. And so that was monumental. And then, it was a lot of little things, right? Like you having a successful surgery didn't happen to me, and yet it
did, and
did.
you were a huge part in helping me get here and helping me process this year, right? And to stay positive and all the beautiful things you said about me earlier. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, it's especially with connection being one of your values and goals for
Mhm.
yourself. I can absolutely see why other people's journeys are impactful to you and how their wins feel like a win for you. Absolutely. Because
Yeah,
that's also a
yeah,
burden release, because you think about people, right? You have empathy for people.
absolutely. But I also feel like I fail continuously with that. But That's for another episode. What about you? I mean, I think that I know, but
Yeah, I mean, this as frustrating as it was to have another back surgery at the start of the year and to be so limited by pain and physical ability, had that not happened at the time of year it did, and again, I wouldn't have pushed for
yeah,
the other things that I had surgery on, and like this what ended up fixing this 15-year long medical
yeah,
quandary. And so that was a huge win. I also there's one milestone, it's not 100% complete yet, so I'm not gonna humble brag about it yet. But I had to recognize the work that I did, even if I didn't do it this year, what the work I had done in the past that got me to achieving it.
yeah,
And then also, with over 100 doctor's appointments, 2 major surgeries, and all this stuff, I didn't lose my house, I didn't lose my job, I didn't lose my friends, right? Like, 10 year ago Tracy really struggled with balancing her health, her finances, and living a life. And I, may not have achieved every goal I wanted to in 2024, but I maintained what I had built. And so I had to recognize that just sometimes maintenance is huge.
that
um
is huge. And thank you for saying that, because I don't think that we consider maintenance or maintaining something as achieving a goal.
And
But
also, it was a lot of work, right? And
yeah,
sometimes buying a house was a huge goal for me 5 years ago, and I
yeah,
knew it would be work. Some years it's a lot more work than others. And so, since I value home stewardship and want to be right, like, I have to recognize that uh that overarching goal is sometimes going to take over other goals, right? Like, things are going to happen I
yes,
didn't know were going to happen and I couldn't have planned for. And so it's
that's right.
prioritizing, right? And recognizing, again, from the values episode, the episode before.
Yeah,
Um, and then, just going back to growth, like, as much as I joke about how hard I am on myself, like that journal entry yesterday, I was laughing the whole time, right? Like, it's not as serious as it sounds, but to go from like aspirational to you didn't do anything to, oh, hey, look at how much you accomplished. That's growth for me. I did not spiral. I
that
didn't
is.
get sad. I didn't get hard on myself.
Yeah,
I was able to recognize all those facets and then
yeah,
move on.
yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right. I've got the tarot cards and I
Lovely.
did the bottom of the deck. Interesting. So for your yearly audit, I got the Eight of Wands.
Oh, movement. Amy, we'll dive deeper. Sorry, we don't
No,
do
I
it.
love it that you yelled that out. I think it's perfect and I am excited about
I
this.
love that card. I think it relates so well. And of course, we would love to hear if you do a yearly audit of your own, or if you're curious about maybe how to plan and set up, like you said, your next year, so that maybe you're ready to do monthly, quarterly, annual audit next year. Let us know. So we are on all the socials on Instagram and YouTube under the Brightly Podcast, or you can reach out to us via email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
Awesome. And oh, and with that, we hope you have a bright and beautiful day.
Bye.